On to the next thing, thesis statements. So, do you remember that class when we sort of gave a grade or a mark out of 10 to all of those thesis statements as they were? What I've done is I've printed these off, and I'm going to give you all one of these thesis statements now. I've taken off the mark, and I want us to talk about what exactly we could do to make this thesis statement better. And I'm going to give you two of them, okay? So some of you will have a bit more. But what we want to be thinking about with thesis statements is two important concepts. So the first element of a thesis statement is it has to have some part of it that is debatable. So look at your thesis statement right now. And I want you to, in your mind, you can underline something if you think one particular part of it is debatable, or if there's maybe on the back of some of them, you can maybe write down what sort of little thoughts you have. Is there an element of this thesis statement that I've just given to you that is a little bit worth thinking about? An argument. Something that maybe is trying to be proved. And if not, write that down too. Okay, before we continue with the second concept, I want you to turn to the person you're sitting beside and just explain to them your thesis statement and if you find it debatable or not. To make it better, like we can mention the theme. Mention the theme a bit more, or something more debatable about the theme makers. This one does sort of seem to just be, yeah, it's saying literary devices and stylistic elements, which is a bit vague, and then something that we already know to be very concrete. We're going to talk about that in a second. What about yours?
Yeah, so what I found is that he or she has mentioned conflict between East and West, but maybe they could have mentioned conflict between old money and new money, that would have made it even more debatable.
Or in that time period,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, like during the roaring 20s, jazz age and stuff like that. And otherwise it's a pretty good thesis statement because they mentioned.
The length of this one is quite a bit more than the other ones, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too, because that kind of plays into, I think, what gives this one a bit more sustenance. Okay, let's talk about the second element now. Some of you had something debatable in your thesis statements, that's really good. And some of you, it was still a bit vague. So let's move on to the second element that your thesis statement needs to have, and that is that it has to have something concrete. Now, usually something concrete comes out in the way of something like characterization or mood or setting, and it's something that for sure we see in the past and how it's employed. So look at your thesis statement right now, and let's see if there's something concrete that is being said. Underline it, make a little note, and give them and explain to them what is the concrete element in your thesis statement, and let's talk about it. Here. Do you have a concrete element in yours?
This year I was characterizing like the use of mood, so there's two type of This is concrete because the reader will know what
So mine is, I think it's the use of figurative language and syntax. I think this is actually too vague and general to be actually concrete, and it's not really supported like in your thesis where it actually talks about the tone and the tension.
Mood, characterization,
And but are the statements that they're making about the mood, characterization, and theme, are those for sure probably within the passage as you can remember?
Yeah, because this seems to be a more in-depth thesis statement that refers only to the passage. Suspense and tension at that moment in the room.
Oh yeah.
The mysterious calmness of Gatsby while the brother is responding to Tom.
Yep.
And then conflict between East and West, which is Gatsby and Tom.
Yep. Good. This seems to have gone well. What I want to do now is we're going to create a spectrum on the board. And on the other side of the spectrum, Willis is going to write debatable. And I want you to take a piece of tape. I'm going to put some right over there on the desk. And I want you to take your thesis statement on whichever end you think it closely sort of goes to. And of course, the ones that are in the middle are going to be the ones that have both elements. Make sense? Great. Let's go. So take some tape.
I don't think the vehicle, but I
polemical. These are, well, some are kind of on the side. Move this way in front of the desk. We'll just make a line right there in front of them, guys, and then everyone can sort of see. And because I'm short and you're tall, I'll stand on this chair. Move all the ways down. Charlie and Rebecca and you, Tom, move all the, yeah, Henry, you can just move down that way. That's so tall. So short. Try just a bit more so everyone can see. Okay. Let's start with the more concrete ones. So I see this one up here. I'll read it out and then let's talk about it. It says, Fitzgerald explores the conflicting ideals of characters through the use of tone, diction, choice, abstract motifs, and allusions. Okay, who had that? Rebecca? Explain.
I said that it kind of just listed out the literary devices that was explored in the passage and kind of just talked about. I think the concrete part was the conflicting ideals of characters, which is kind of obvious throughout the book that he has always looked at like conflicts between the characters. So that I said there wasn't anything debatable about the statement.
Yeah, it was a concrete statement followed by a grocery list of sort of literary devices. Who's that? Okay, Henry. And guys, be ready, and if you want to contest him and say, no, that's debatable, and no, that's concrete, then feel free to just go up there and fight Henry and move it around, and we'll see. Henry, you ready for a fight? Yeah, we'll see if you get one. Okay, go.
So I thought it was in the middle because it had an element that was debatable, which was the deterioration of Gatsby's credibility.
Okay.
And that's not.
You think that is debatable?
Yeah.
That his credibility deteriorates?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
But then it had like the concrete element of juxtaposition between Tom and Gatsby, which is pretty clear in the passage.
Yeah. Do you guys remember this? So guys, what do you think about this as a debatable concept? The deterioration of Gatsby's credibility. Is that debatable or is that factual? What do you think?
I think it's not debatable, it's factual because as seen in that passage, Daisy definitely is being drawn away from Gatsby.
So would we move it or would we leave it? How far would you move it? Liam, why don't you pick it up and move it and see if you would change it? Not totally concrete. What do you guys think? Henry, how do you feel?
Violated. I thought it was debatable because, like, even though Daisy perhaps gets swayed or by Tom's words, at the end of the passage she still drives away with Gatsby.
Yeah, very good. Well, okay, so then maybe Henry's going to move it a little bit more, but let's leave that one for now, and let's go on to an element over here that's completely debatable. Someone has said this is an entirely debatable statement. It says, Fitzgerald makes a statement on how the closer one gets to the American dream, the more one loses sight of their identity. There's that phrase, the American dream, right in a thesis statement. Tell me, whose was this? Who did this belong to? That was yours too? These are both yours? Okay, you've got 10 seconds to give us your reason for this.
I just put it like full debatable because I didn't see anything that was concrete. Like it didn't have characterization or like anything that was clear in the passage.
Perfect. Guys, anything concrete that exists here? Someone else that maybe hasn't commented recently or yet. Anything concrete here? Actually, I kind of agree with you. I think this is fairly sort of debatable. And of course, we talked about this in class, putting sort of a very nebulous phrase like the American dream right in the middle of our thesis statement could be problematic later when we're trying to make an argument that's, has concrete elements in it, right? Because the term itself it can be debatable.
Fitzgerald uses dialogue between Tom and Gatsby, choice of diction to describe the change of reaction of Gatsby, as well as omniscient narration of Daisy's reaction to Tom's accusations too.
Okay, sort of ends there. There might be more, but let's work with what you've got. It's quite a bit longer than the other ones you've seen so far. It's okay to add some length to your thesis statement, put a bit more information in there. It doesn't just have to be one sentence. So I like that about this one. But tell us, why did you put it under concrete?
It doesn't make any argument at all. It just kind of lists Gatsby, Fitzgerald uses this and this and to describe this, basically.
Yeah.
There's nothing argumentative about it really.
Yeah. If you had to add something argumentative about it, what would it be like?
I'd probably change the second part to be something about like, I don't know, like, I don't know.
Maybe a bit of something about Nick being unreliable. I see you have written down there and you've underlined the omniscient narrator and Daisy's reaction to all of this. I think you're right, there might be an element in that last part that could be interpreted in a different way. And it's going to be, this is an extract from The Great Gatsby, that's right. Are you going to write down anything else on that line? Exactly, that's right. And I really, you don't even have to, you could just write down The Great Gatsby and then the author's name. You don't have to write down word for word this extract is from, unless you think it will make you feel more comfortable. But be cognizant of time. Take a look at them because they're carefully chosen, right, to be reflective of some of the main elements in this passage. So they might sort of push you in a direction you might not have thought of in your first read through. And now go through and do some of your annotations. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do this, okay? You will get maybe a little bit more time, we'll see. But let's start with 10 minutes, okay? So highlighters at the ready, pens and pencils, and go for it. At the end of these 10 minutes though, you need to have a thesis statement ready to share. Let's take a look at sort of what we've got. Before we get into our thesis statements and our annotations, can you just share with the person, and maybe you can join these guys, the person you're sitting beside, how you color-coded your IOC? So I see a lot of you have used highlighters. How did you organize what you just did as far as your annotations go?
Like his map or Wheel of Wealth is a lot more penetrable.
And the effect of this, and the effect that Fitzgerald's choices, that's the ones you mentioned, the effect they have on the reader on it. Guys, I can't say it enough. Write it down on your page right now. Reader and effect, because we need to really work on that. You found that was great. And keep thinking about that. And remember, the effect on the reader, it doesn't have to be, I'm not looking for something complicated either when I'm asking what effect does this have on the reader. For example, the juxtaposition might emphasize, Fitzgerald might be using juxtaposition to emphasize to the reader that these characters come from vastly different worlds. It's as simple as that, right? It doesn't have to be, I mean, your explanations of the literary devices, that part might be more complex, but the effect on the reader, I mean, think about how you felt when you were first reading these statements and sort of use that to guide yourself. Okay, did anyone else have something from the first 5 lines?